The story concept for today's episode, turning Shrek into a horror story, is something that hit me out of nowhere this week, but as soon as it did, I knew I had to make a video about it. And I figured it was a perfect first creepy sort of episode for Halloween month this year. I'd considered turning Shrek characters into SCPs for a while, like I've done with so many other animated characters, but I'm really glad that I held out until this idea came to me. I hope you all enjoy the story and art as much as I enjoyed writing and illustrating it. Now let's get into it, shall we? Let's go.
Hit like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but either way, enjoy the show.
Fiona knew she was in a nightmare, but that knowledge didn't protect her from the pain of choking on mud sliding down her throat as she lashed her arms in the murky swamp, trying desperately, hopelessly, to get to safety. As she always could in this recurring nightmare, she could see the silhouette of a hand reaching towards her. Somehow she knew that it could help her out, get her to freedom, but never, not once, had she willingly reached out and taken it. She started slipping farther and farther down into the muck until her eyes glazed over black. Then she awoke, coughing and gagging as if the mud had followed her into her real life. A life that, sadly, was not much better than the nightmare. She only had a brief flicker of reprieve as her breathing slowed, sat in her dark bedroom, barely lit by the moon through the window and the dim red light of her alarm clock in the near-empty mansion. Just as she was getting some relief, she started to feel something sliding along the skin of her forearm. In her sleepy daze, she tried to just brush it away, before realizing it wasn't something moving on top of her skin.
No, please, not again, not right now.
Her veins started to pulse and grow into lumpy green masses as her flesh shifted hue all up her arm, moving towards her neck. It always felt the worst when it reached her face. Whenever that happened, she could feel it leaching into her mind, making her uncertain if her consciousness would even remain in the moments to follow. She leapt up and paced around the room, trying to focus on any innocuous, mundane memory of daily life to keep her present as her flesh bubbled and warped out of control. The so-called doctors from the sect of the Godmother had told her that this could keep her soul from slipping away as her other body tried to merge with her. Fiona's faith in their advice had lessened with each passing year, isolated in this island mansion, but there was little else she could do. She thought about the most uninteresting things she could, cutting onions, eating parfait, even just sitting on a nice boulder and reading a book. Not that she could ever go outside safely with the beast lurking around the grounds. She felt her face starting to warp, and at that point none of her distractions were helping. She felt a new mouth, a new eye, and dozens of warts sprouting from her, feeling like someone was grabbing the skin of her cheek and trying to lift her into the air with it. She knew it could get the attention of the beast, but she couldn't keep herself from letting out a pained shriek, which emerged from both her mouths. In that moment, oddly, the thought that came to her was of her parents, the last time she'd seen them. They told her how proud they were that she might be the conduit that the sect had been searching for so many years, the one that would prove the Godmother's vision of the future was possible. The memory wasn't only clear because it was the last time she'd been allowed to see her parents, but because, even at 14 years old, she clearly recognized doubtful, uncertain notes hiding behind their fake smiles. Even they weren't sure what the Godmother was doing to her would work, and they'd still let Fiona stay locked up for 7 years anyway. Anger churned in her gut, then guilt at doubting her parents, at doubting the great Godmother herself. Even guilt for the fact that part of her didn't want the transformation to work. Part of her didn't want to give them all what they wanted as punishment for locking her away from the world to try and get it. But at least as the guilt was settling in, the transformation was passing. Her skin was returning to normal, and her head slowly changed to its normal form. Though, as always, she had no idea when it may happen again. It could be a few weeks, or even a matter of hours. She never knew what triggered it and could never predict when it may come or how long it would last. The uncertainty was the part that chewed at her gut day in and day out. But on this night, she'd at least have something else to take her mind off of it, even if it wasn't a very pleasant distraction. From outside, the beast shrieked in its horrible blend of a woman's scream and a ferocious roar. Fiona got as far from the window as she could, thinking her scream had enraged it. It couldn't get inside. The walls and windows had all been fireproofed from the outside, and the doors were all locked. But Still, it could come to the window and angrily leer in at her. Fiona didn't even like looking at it. She sat in the corner and curled her head into her knees, but then realized the beast's lumbering steps weren't getting closer. It cried out again and again, stomping around the property. As much as she didn't want to look out, now she wanted to know. Was somebody else on the island? Was someone riling it up? Had the doctors finally come back for the first time in over a month? If so, why hadn't they shot a tranquilizer at the beast from a boat before getting to land as usual? She stood and crept towards the window. She desperately didn't want to look out, but she needed to know. She got closer and closer, but before she could look out, she heard the door to the mansion smash open. Thumping footsteps ran in, and following them came the beast's cries. They echoed through the mansion louder than Fiona had ever heard them before. Whoever was here had just let the beast inside. Fiona didn't know what to do. Part of her wanted to believe this was still a nightmare, but she knew cowering under her bedsheets wouldn't protect her. She'd done plenty of martial arts training while cooped up in this mansion, but nothing that would save her from the beast. It was hard to tell where in the vast mansion it was going, but at least whoever was stomping around running from the monster didn't seem to be headed her way. Her room was the highest one in the tallest point of the east wing. The stomp seemed to be moving away from her, though as they faded into nothingness, that almost made things worse, not knowing where the beast could be. One faint glimmer of hope came across her mind, though. If there were some sort of reckless intruders here on the island, they had to have gotten here on a boat, right? Maybe she could steal it while the beast was distracted. But then guilt surged through her gut again. She couldn't leave this place. The secta needed her. She was doing important work. Though she didn't know if those were truly her beliefs, or just ones she'd heard parroted to her enough times to be convinced they were true. She finally stopped thinking and just acted. She went to the door of her room, ignored all the fears swelling up inside her, and opened it, stepping out onto the stairs headed down to the second floor. She stepped as cautiously as she could down each one. Despite all her time in this mansion, she'd never noticed just how creaky and old these steps were. Fiona could hear her own heart thudding as she crept down the rickety stairs. When she was halfway, she heard the distant sound of the beast shrieking again. Was it getting closer? And was it getting hotter in here? The outside of the building was fireproof, but the beast had never gotten inside. Even if she was just imagining the increasing temperature, the whole mansion going up in flames was a very real possibility. Fiona held her breath and sped down the stairs, ignoring the increasing noise. She got to the second floor hallway and immediately turned to head down it, when she froze, seeing a silhouetted figure in front of the window at the end of the hall. It almost looked human. Almost. It saw her and stepped closer, close enough to reveal a long, grinning mouth. Well, this short, donkey-human hybrid being certainly wasn't a pleasant sight. It did give her another faint flicker of hope. Maybe it was just her wanting to think this, but Fiona thought that maybe one of the other experiments had been successful. Maybe the Godmother had found another conduit, someone who'd successfully merged with their far, far away body. But then the being spoke and dashed that hope. It was the same sort of twisted nonsense of all the other failed experiments. As the Godmother put it, the soul must have fled during the merging of the two bodies, leaving only a mindless, mutated monster. Fiona started backing away as the creature came closer. This thing wasn't as big as the beast, but if it was also a failed experiment, then it could be just as dangerous. Fiona's back hit a wall. She hadn't thought about where she was going. On one side of her was a door to a bathroom, and the other a closet. The bathroom had a window, but none of the windows in the mansion opened. She was trapped. She could lock the door to her own room, but if she started to run back up to it, would this thing run too and get to her before she headed upstairs? The closer it came, the more horrifying the little monstrosity looked to her, and the less time she had. Fiona tried to think of what her parents, the doctor, or even the Godmother would want her to do here, but no ideas coming to her were useful. Nobody could help her. Or so she thought. Suddenly, footsteps came bounding down the next hall over from behind the mutant. It turned back just as a genuinely human figure ran up behind it wielding a sword. Fiona thought a gun would have been much more useful, but the weapon at least clued her in that this man was from the sect. He swung the blade at the donkey mutant, but the creature lowered its head and blocked with one of the many lumpy horns sprouting from it. The man thankfully still ran forward and tackled the mutant to the ground. He grabbed the nearest door and opened it. He and the mutant both scrambled to their feet, but once the donkey was up, the man tackled it into the room, then slashed the handle with his sword, before slamming it shut. At least for now, the mutant was trapped. The man then turned to her. "Fiona! Fear not, I'm here to rescue you." He marched towards her with his head held high, and Fiona's fear slowly turned to relief. He was a real person. He was a man a little older than her with flowing golden hair and a chiseled jaw. "I am Charming Saunders, and I swear to keep you safe from these abominations that have come for you." Fiona's eyes widened. "Saunders? Are you?" He smiled proudly. "Yes, I am the son of the Godmother herself. Only I could be trusted to keep you, our most precious asset, safe." Fiona didn't really like being referred to as an asset, but having the Godmother's son here for her felt like a huge honor. Or at least she thought it should feel that way. More doubt surged through her as he said, "Now, let's get you to the bunker. You'll be safe there until we can rid the mansion of the beast. Of all the beasts." Before Fiona could say anything, Charming grabbed her wrist and started dragging her down the halls towards the next set of stairs. He was holding her far more tightly than was comfortable, and she thought he was moving far too loudly inside a mansion that now apparently had multiple beasts stalking through it. "Why are we going to the bunker? Can't we just leave the island?" "Don't be silly, Fiona. We still need you here. More than ever, in fact. The reason the doctors haven't returned to help you complete your assimilation with your far, far away body is because that infuriating Foundation, who's long been hunting our sect because they so profoundly misunderstand the importance of our work, located the sect's catacombs and sent one of our own failed experiments to hunt us. Some Professor Farquaad from among them somehow managed to capture, contain, and tame an experiment of ours to use against us. Our doctors believed you were finally close to making your perfect union, so none returned here in an effort to ensure they couldn't be followed to your location by the Foundation. But it seems this brooding monster found its way here with its little mule ally anyhow." They got to the stairs and stomped down them, making Fiona's heart thud rapidly along with the steps, certain that something would hear them and come devour them. They started running towards the other wing of the building through the rustic old mansion in the dark, with Fiona's sadness at the idea of going into the bunker competing with her fear for most dominant emotion. But if this monster was smart enough to figure out where I am, maybe he's not so mindless. Maybe he has merged with his far, far away form while keeping his soul intact. Maybe he's already done what I've failed to do. Trust me, this thing is not a beautiful merging of two forms. As my mother has foretold, when a soul's two simultaneous lives that it lives, from this realm and the realm of fairy tale creatures, are unified into one body, they will be a divine being that ushers the world into a new era, one in which the magic that is our birthright to command will re-enter our world from the other, and we can finally live with the power of both planes of reality at once. It was a spiel that Fiona had heard over and over and over again from her parents, from the Godmother, from the doctors, and everyone else in their sect, but her doubts in it were still growing more and more. Finally, as they were moving into the next wing of the building, right near the front door of the grand entry, Fiona stopped, forcing Charming to stop along with her. Even if I might still be the conduit, I can't just hide in a bunker, especially if the Foundation knows where I am now. We need to get me off this island, somewhere else that's more safe. He tried to keep pulling her along. "Fiona, I know what's best. My mumsy knows what's best. This thing won't stop coming. He will not stop coming. If you simply hit the ground running, it will never stop chasing you. You need to get into the bunker and hide in safety, continuing to try and assimilate your other form, while I handle the monster and we deal with the Foundation and that Farquaad. Now get moving!" Just as he was tugging on her arm once more, a heavy footstep thumped in the nearest hallway. Then again, stomping around the corner opposite the front door, came an 8-foot-tall mucus-green ogre, While one of its eyes was lost gazing upward, the other found Fiona and locked onto her. As much as Fiona's trust in Charming was fading, seeing this thing was certainly making the bunker a tempting option. Charming started pulling her forward again when a plume of fire exploded through the room ahead of them. Charming shrieked in fear as fire licked across the front of his face and singed some of his golden hair. He released Fiona, patting at his head, even though it wasn't on fire. She fell back to the ground and scrambled backwards away from the beast rounding the corner. She thought it was terrifying to see this thing while safely hiding behind the mansion walls. But it was that much worse, having nothing between her and its mutated, half-human, fire-dripping maw. Quick interruption to say that if you're enjoying the storytelling and art in this episode, you might want to also grab a copy of my latest novel, Fear of the Demon Hunters. It's got 66 pages with full-color art, and has some similar horror themes in it to what's happening in the story today. Or if you want to color some of my art, you could check out my coloring books, and you can find all those on my Amazon bookstore linked in the description. Now back into the story. As Fiona scrambled back, she bumped her head into something. She looked up to see the same donkey mutant from earlier had gotten free and found her. Instead of looking at her, though, it was looking up at the beast, and said, Fiona leapt up away from it, but that just put her closer to the beast stomping into the entryway. Its dragon eye was following Charming, whose hand was aggressively shaking as he aimed his sword at the beast. Its other eye, its still human-looking eye from the poor person who'd failed to properly assimilate their far, far away form, was staring at her. The beast thrust its head down and spat another wave of flames at Charming. He dove to the ground, dropping his sword as he did. His pant leg caught fire, and he flailed around to put it out. He then leapt up and just sprinted outside. "I'm getting out! I'll lure it away! You get to the bunker!" She barely heard him as he sprinted away towards the island shore. He'd abandoned her. She'd hoped he'd protect her, but clearly she couldn't hold out for a hero to end this horrible night. The beast didn't even follow him. It turned both its eyes towards her, and its throat began to ignite once more. It was going to cook her alive, with one eye looking ferocious and the other looking confused and in pain. As much as she'd long feared this beast, Fiona now had an overwhelming desire to put it out of its misery. And for the first time, she actually had access to a weapon with which she could do that. Surrounded by mutated beings on all sides, she let drive overtake her fear and leapt to Charming's sword. She scooped it up and ran up to the beast. She leapt into the air and swung the sword at it. She would have carved its head clean off, if its reflexes had been slower. It swung its head up, bashing it onto the ceiling, but at least getting out of the path of her swipe. Momentum carried the sword around and it sliced into the floorboards in the ground. Fiona tried to pull it free, but before she could, the flames came. She closed her eyes, part of her feeling prepared for this nightmare of a life to be over. The heat was overwhelming, but not nearly as hot as it should have been. She wasn't even in pain. She opened her eyes to see the ogre towering over her and using its back as a shield to protect her from the flames. Its many layers of thick skin started to bubble away, but not nearly enough to kill it. She was paralyzed in shock. It was actually protecting her. Despite its horrific appearance, she suddenly felt far safer around it than she had with Charming. Shocking her further still, it spoke again, but this time, not in the same nonsense these failed experiments usually did. It said,
"This is the part where you run away."
It then gestured to the door. She almost wanted to stay and help it, but finally getting permission from anyone to do what she'd always wanted to do was too enticing. Fiona thanked it, then ran out of the building. She'd forgotten what fresh air smelled like, and how grass felt under her feet as she ran and ran towards the water. She got closer and closer to it, feeling more free than she had in years, until she saw Charming, using his phone to check his singed hair next to a docked motorboat. He saw her coming and shoved the phone in his pocket. "Fiona, what are you doing outside? I told you to get in the bunker." What? Are you seriously trying to make me feel guilty for running after you just abandoned me? I did my best to protect you, but it is your duty to our people to survive, to assimilate with your far, far away form and usher in two things, okay? Shut up. I've spent the last 7 years feeling guilty every time I had any thoughts against the Godmother, my parents, or the sect, and I've had it. I don't think any of you have any idea what you're talking about or doing. That foundation actually managed to work with one of the people that we've mutated, and they're obviously not as mindless as we thought, because that one in there just spoke to me. It protected me. I may not know what I'm doing from here, but I do know that I'm done listening to anyone from the cult of the Godmother. Charming looked appalled by what she said, but fear overtook his face before he could respond as he looked past her. Fiona turned and saw the ogre lumbering up behind her. In the distance, she even thought she saw the donkey mutant man rubbing the draconic beast's face, like he was soothing it. But she was too preoccupied to confirm that's what she saw. You see, this is what you get for questioning the sect. You're about to be slain by a monster instead of becoming our conduit, our savior, as you were meant to. The ogre stopped right behind her and looked angrily at Charming, but his expression softened as his gaze fell onto her. Then, slowly, the ogre reached out his hand. Fiona's jaw dropped open. Her mind instantly flashed back to her recurring nightmare. The hand reaching towards her felt so familiar. But this time, she was finally willing to take it and accept its help. She set her hand in the monster's. It was meaty and leathery, but it held her gently, and as it did, her body once more started to transform. Every other time this had happened, her instinct was to stop it, to hide it, and distract herself from it and fear it. Not this time. This time she embraced it and actually enjoyed it as she felt her flesh transforming. Her ears, face, her whole body grew and changed shape. She had never felt stronger in her entire life. By the time the change was done, she expected to look down and see herself as a monster. But she actually thought she looked beautiful and powerful. Charming looked up at her in awe. Are you still in there, Fiona? You are the conduit, don't you see? The Godmother knows all, But he shut his mouth as she stomped closer to him and leaned down. Feeling overwhelming joy from the intimidation she was clearly imbuing in the cowering man, Fiona said with a grin, "This is the part where you run away." This thing won't stop coming. He will not stop coming. If you simply hit the ground, run. It's gonna be a hard one. This thing won't stop coming. He will not stop coming. Okay. Clearly, she couldn't hold out for a hero. These might take some of the tension out of the story. And in the morning, I'm making waffles.
If you enjoyed this, I'd recommend checking out some of my other things as horror story episodes, such as maybe the one I did around Has-Been Hotel a few years ago, or maybe Cryptids in the Realm of Hopeful Horrors, which is the pilot episode of a horror-based series that's going to be ramping up on this channel soon. I'll have those linked somewhere. But besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note, and the thought I want to leave people with today is a quote I read this week from a man named Noel Dazel. It's in regards to the goals that you have or the things that you want to acquire in your life. He asked the question, would you still want the same things if no one could see you have them? Essentially, it's a good way to consider, are you going after something because you think it will impress other people, or because regardless of other people's opinions, it will genuinely make you feel happy and fulfilled? Because ultimately, if you're trying to impress other people by acquiring or achieving something, even once you get that thing or achieve that thing, you'll eventually find that there's no way to impress everyone. So it's much better to go after what will make you feel internally fulfilled. I hope that's inspiring or thought-provoking. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Monday. Goodbye.